So, you're making a game but want to release a demo with limited features and closed access to some parts of the game. What do you do? I don't fucking know, it's up to you. All I can do is show you my way of doing things. Just know that it's not the only way out there. I'm gonna cover 3 topics. Using preprocessor symbols to remove parts of your code, moving files to different folder during the build, in case of resources folder, and in case of general assets. In your case, you might want to do things differently. If you have some build automation, you may want to do this with Jenkins build script. If you have lots of assets, you may also make use of asset bundles and remove whole asset bundle from specific build. Alright, so let's make a proper tool. We will create 2 buttons. One will build a full version of the game and the second one for the demo. This will be an editor script, so create an empty one in editor folder. Now let's set up a name for the executable file and then create a function to make the build itself. We will need to specify scenes included in build and the build path. In theory, all we need is this single line to build the player. I'm building a 64-bit version for Windows without any additional build options. We will later tweak this function to support additional symbols to limit demo functionality. For that I'm gonna add a bool I will use a bit later. Additionally, we might want to run our game right after building it, so I'll make a quick function for that, cause why the fuck not? And now let's make the buttons themselves. For the full game it's gonna be pretty simple. Menu item to define button name and path. Remember to mark functions as static as they are editor used functions and they do not rely on any specific object instance from this class. Save folder panel is a helper function that will run Windows Explorer path browser for us. That's how we'll grab the build path instead of defining a static one, which of course you can do. We'll also define the scenes we want to build. Create build, run build, that's it, we got ourselves a build. And now we can make a demo one. Here we're gonna modify some things for the demo version. Let's add a preprocessing symbol that we will use later in code. Firstly, grab our current list of preprocessing symbols, add a new one, we'll call it demo. Then we run the build player the same as before. After the build, we will remove the demo symbol by replacing defined symbols with the original list. It's also a good idea to catch any exceptions if they occur. You can check your defined symbols in project settings, player, other settings, and in case you want to test some things in editor, you can always add demo to this list and remove it later. Back to coding. Let's just copy the full version function and tweak it to use the demo build process. So how do we make use of the newly added demo thingy? We just use #if and the demo keyword here. Then we end the block with #endif. Here I just made 2 simple mono behaviors that either set GameObject active or not active based on the symbol. In this example, when we play the game in the editor, there's no text showing it's a demo. Same thing would happen in full build. That's because demo is not defined in preprocessor. But if we run demo build, we have the text active. Simple stuff. You can use this to remove whole blocks of code if you wish. Next, we'll tackle something a bit more complex. What if you have some assets that you might not want to include in your demo build at all? What's the point? So that they cannot be extracted from the build, or the game to be hacked in order to activate or use those assets anyway. In my case, I have quite a few scriptable objects defining level changes, spells, and artifacts in my resources folder. I want demo build to only include a selected list of those. For this purpose, I'm going to create a process that will manually move any unwanted SOs out of the resources folder and into a temporary folder. And since those assets will be neither in the resources folder, nor will they be referenced in any other objects, they should not make their way into the build, but we will later check to make sure. Remember, we're making use of the way that Unity packs its stuff into the build. If something is in resources folder, it will always be included in build. If it's anywhere else and has a valid meta file, it will be included in build if it's referenced anywhere in the scene, directly or indirectly. And here I need to warn you, this solution is a bit hacky. It involves moving files in your project with code. Make sure to have your project backupped to test with just single files in the beginning, and most important, to handle exceptions and errors correctly. If you land on an exception and it throws an error, you might transfer files to one place, but fail to move them back after building the game. And you'll end up with a bit of a mess to clean up. So do this at your own risk. Okay, so let's get started. Here I have a simple scriptable object that I use to reference some of my other scriptable objects in resources that I wanna skip when building a demo. I'm gonna assign here just 2 of my several levels in the game that I wanna include in my demo. Of course you don't need scriptable object for this, you can reference those however you want, either by name or just browsing for those. I'm quickly gonna get reference to all the other assets of the same type, And first things first, I'm gonna use the move asset function to move those to a separate folder. Make sure this folder exists. I'm also gonna have a short list of things that I actually moved, so I know what to move back. And that's exactly what we're gonna do right after building the game. We're gonna move those things back. Also, we need to refresh the resources. As you can see, in the full build/editor we have all the levels available, and in the demo build we only have 2 main levels. Alright, so those were resources. But what if you wanna move just a general asset, not in the resources folder? What do? The problem is, with the move asset, we also correctly move the meta file and its references. So technically, if it wasn't about the resources folder, the asset would be just moved to another place. We don't want that. What we want to do is basically break that reference and not include it in the build. What do? We use a bit more of a raw function for this. We use file.move. This will make sure that we only move the file that we want and do not fix anything automatically regarding the meta files. So let's try it out. What I've done here is I've created 2 sample images. One will be a reference point, so we will include it in build, and the second one should be excluded from the build. So I placed both in the scene to make a reference and to show them, and in the script we'll just use file.move. For now I'm just using string encode to provide path. You can of course grab that however you want. We'll do file.move to a temporary folder. Of course this folder needs to be created first, and right after the build we move that file back. Of course in a more serious build you should try to catch any exceptions to this. Okay, so now let's see. We'll create a build, let's run it, and that's the correct behavior. The reference image is there, while the other one is not. But we're still not sure if the image actually was included in build, or maybe the reference is just broken, right? Let's quickly check it. Let's open some files in the build itself. Here we have a couple of binary files that include most of the assets in game. Since those are binary files, those are mostly gibberish when we open them with simple editor like Notepad. But what they still have is strings. And in those strings are the file names. So we can basically just go through the files that might contain our asset and look for the file name that we want. We'll look for the name of the file, and as you can see, we can only find one of the files. The second one is correctly excluded from the build. It's nowhere to be found in the asset files. Alright, so this should be it for today. And once again, those are just the example methods that I use. There is probably a ton of other options for you. Also, if you have some of your own, feel free to comment down below. I'm interested in what you use when it comes to build automation scripts and limiting build features. Also, if you're interested, come and join my Discord server. I'm trying to grow it a bit. That's it, see ya!